Have you ever found yourself volunteering with an animal organization or making the rounds through the community to see what individuals need support with when it comes to their pets? And found yourself in the middle of maybe like an awkward, somewhat triggering conversation about spaying and neutering animals. I kind of hear this often when I am in ironically enough, the animal shelter I volunteer in. I hear some of our clients come in and they say things like, oh, that cat's so cute. I had a cat like that in the past, and I felt it was really important for them to have just one litter. Or, my friend has a dog, and this dog just had a litter of puppies because we really wanted to make sure that dog had at least one litter. And can I bring the puppies here tomorrow to the shelter so that you guys can adopt them out? So I'm curious to know something for you guys to think about is have you have you heard people say things like this? How do you respond to things like this? I assume most of our audience members here kind of realize this how important it is to spay and neuter your pets. But really, my question is how do we navigate a landscape of encouraging individuals to spay and neuter their animals when some people, on a very fundamental level, don't think that's the right thing to do or kind of see a different future for their animals at home? That's the question I'm leaving with you guys, and every time or th that's the question I'm leading with here, and every time I go to ask these questions in the beginning of these episodes, I always imagine them to be so simple, and they're like 8 layers deep by the time I ask the question, but that's what we're here for. So in we're gonna dive deeper into that question with our amazing guest today, Heather Grimm, DVM. Heather is an amazing, dedicated veterinarian who graduated from Colorado State University in 2011 and has since been providing essential veterinary care in rural Montana. Heather is deeply committed to ensuring that all species of animals, we love that, in rural communities, especially on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation, receive the care they deserve. So, as the team lead of our Fort Peck Indian Reservation team, Heather is a passionate advocate for spaying and neutering animals to reduce the number of animals who may not be wanted, who may end up in shelters, and all that jazz. So, welcome to the podcast, Heather. Longest introduction ever. You can tell I'm really passionate about spaying and neutering.
Awesome. Thank you. So happy to be here. So excited.
Yes, Heather, I know that you and I were kind of briefly chatting about this before we started recording. But it is so exciting for us to finally have a team on an Indian reservation, especially the Fort Peck Reservation. It's a really special place. I've done some research on the reservation, and it seems um, it seems like both a beautiful place to live, but also has its own set of interesting challenges. So maybe we can start this conversation off by getting some insight from you on what some of these unique challenges are that you face when you're providing veterinary care in Montana on the reservation. What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure in your research, you probably discovered that the Fort Peck Reservation is quite substantial in geography. And the actual reservation boundaries cover over 2 million acres of land. So we have an extensive land mass to cover. We do have some more of the larger towns on the reservation. So Wolf Point, Poplar, kind of some main hubs on the reservation, but we have a lot of small outlying communities that are often like not realistically feasible for someone to try to travel beyond having a vehicle. And that's actually one of the oftentimes challenges that we have is that oftentimes people cannot access care because they don't have a vehicle, they don't have a ride, maybe someone was supposed to give them a ride, they didn't show up. And so sometimes just geography itself can be a huge limitation, barrier to care sort of phenomenon. And then it's also interesting. So probably pretty common reservation. I think it's pretty, if you know anything about reservations, pretty well known fact. Usually a lot of street dog, feral dog population that's there kind of left unchecked, which carries kind of its own interesting challenges from a cultural perspective and from a like from that education standpoint. Like in some ways, it's what's always been, and so there's sometimes that hurdle of trying to make positive strides forward, making progress, and saying like, "Hey, it doesn't have to be this way. Like, we don't have to worry." Um, about whether, your children are safe to be out playing in the streets or if an elderly person can go out walking in the community. That is something. There is always the concern, the members here, the community members, the tribal members, no one wants to be known as that reservation that has someone killed by a pack of dogs. But we're still myself and then my wonderful collaborator, Tina Betts's medicine with the Wolfman Pound puppies. We are just working hand in hand, trying to change that narrative, um, trying to really encourage spay and neutering, try to encourage that. Again, it was a fascinating question because the list of reasons why people don't want to spay and neuter. We've had people who wanted to refuse it because their dog is maybe considered their guard dog. A lot of people live out in the country, so yep, yep. And so concerned that like, oh, but if we neuter him, he won't be aggressive, he won't protect the property. I've literally had someone who told me that, which I was like, okay, or like, oh, but they need to have at least one litter, or if she has a litter, it'll calm her down. She won't be as hyper. Probably not. Yep. I mean, and even
Or
sometimes,
if we spay her, maybe she won't be as hyper because she won't be
right,
trying to leave the house to
right,
reproduce.
right, exactly.
But let me let you continue before I just start screaming like I'm the peanut gallery here.
Yeah. We had one gal who said she would not neuter her dog, even though she'd scheduled multiple appointments, and most of the time the dog would be missing because he'd be off wandering. He'd be out wandering around. And she was like, "Oh, but my dad said that you would never do that to a man, so you couldn't do that to a dog." And I was like,
Ugh.
hold the phone, not the same, not the same at all. And so there's just a lot from an education standpoint of trying to get people to understand that, which is also so one of the other challenges as well is oftentimes people they're either homeless, they're maybe living in places that are condemned housing, maybe staying with a relative, that sort of thing. But a lot of places, like we don't have fenced yards, animals are not necessarily contained. So that adds an interesting element to it as well, that dogs oftentimes are just freely roaming in the community. Yeah, yep. And obviously then not having spayed and neutered animals, you get the pack mentality, you get them to pack up, you get dog fights, you get hit by car dogs. Like it's kind of just a whole cascade of events that a lot of
Ugh.
could be prevented.
Oh my gosh. That just makes your work, I think, obviously more challenging and makes your role in the community even more essential. And
Mhm,
so the next question here is how do you, and I am sincerely asking myself, like I said, as someone who volunteers at a shelter, and you know it struggles to have these conversations delicately.
mhm.
Um, so how do you approach educating these individuals, these pet guardians in rural communities about the importance of spaying and neutering their animals? How do you walk me through? Do you have some kind of framework you use for these conversations? How do you like keep your cool and say the right thing?
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting. I have definitely found that one of the strategies that seems to be most effective is that oftentimes people will come to us with, especially dogs that have been, whether they've been hit by a car, they have wounds from a dog fight, like they have some sort of other complaint or concern that they come to our office with. And at that point in time, I mentioned to them, like, oh, hey, like, your male dog got into a fight and now he needs to get sutures to get his wounds all healed up and some antibiotics and some pain relievers. Like, how about we work a deal that we get him neutered at the same time? And then it's going to decrease the likelihood that he's going to get into a fight, that this is going to happen again. And so a lot of times when you can try to explain to them that like we can prevent this from
Mm.
occurring again, most people have really been on board. And part of that too is mentioned them already briefly, but the Wolf Point Pound puppies, we do a low cost to spay neuter voucher program through them. And so a lot of times
Oh,
that's kind of how
nice.
yeah, essentially work it is I'll be like, hey, okay, so for this amount of money, we will get your dog spayed or neutered, vaccinated, dewormed, give them flea and tick preventative, and I will fix this problem for you. And so we've even had people that like balk, and then we're like, okay, but if you don't want to go that route, like your total invoices, and here's the estimate. And most people are like, oh, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and just get them spayed or neutered and get all of those things kind of as a package deal. So I'd say probably the biggest thing is trying to reiterate the safety and health of their pet and like all the ways in which it can benefit their pet and help just foster the relationship that they have with their pet to get them spayed and neutered.
That's brilliant. Okay, I see. So what you're saying is okay, and that makes sense because I guess people are more, invested in the relationship they have with their own pet. Sometimes when you take that angle of like, let's reduce the amount of animals in shelters, or when you get like lofty like that, people can't access that idea or relate to that. So that makes perfect sense to me that you are speaking with these clients who might be in an emotionally charged place because, I mean, anytime you're at the vet, anytime the health of your animal is kind of hanging in the balance, I know as a pet parent, I'm just like, sure, whatever it is, let's just do it. Let's just do it. It sounds great. I'm down. And especially, like you mentioned, the partnership you have makes that access to care a bit more affordable. Okay, so that makes sense. So I guess the advice here, I'm like fully talking to myself. Daria, the advice here is to keep it personal, keep it grounded, keep it relevant to the individual and in the room. Because the truth is, like, not everyone understands the implications of not spaying and neutering their animal in terms of overcrowding shelters, in terms of having animals on, the streets. So that's really good advice. Advice that I'm giving myself as inspired by you. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure.
It's good. I think it's especially, when you're an advocate or like an activist like us, it's so easy for your default to be like, I'm going to stand on the soapbox and I'm going to tell you how your behavior is a scourge to the community. When like that's just like not effective. When
Right,
it's
right.
just people care about themselves and their pets. And oftentimes the reason why they don't want to get their animals spayed or neutered is because of that relationship they have with them, because they think they're doing the right thing for that pet. So I appreciate you saying that, turning that idea on its head and showing them that the best thing for their animal is to get them that surgical procedure. Yeah,
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah, which is, I mean, we definitely have had some feedback that people are oftentimes concerned about, like, will their pet live through surgery? Will it live through anesthesia? And so trying to reiterate to people as well that, like it's a very typically safe procedure. We do everything within our power to make sure that your pet is going to come through and be fine and you'll be reunited. Oftentimes I find, especially through work with the Street Dog Coalition and the clinics that we've had so far, is sometimes their pet is really probably all that they feel like they have in this world. They
Yeah.
don't have a reliable place to stay. Certainly probably don't have a support network of other people that they can rely on. And so sometimes, like their whole world would be kind of put to a loss if they don't have their pet any longer. So sometimes it can really be a lifeline for them. And so sometimes that's a hurdle as well. It's like, hey, like we don't want to take your pet away from you. We don't want anything to happen to your pet either. We really just want to make sure that it gets some basic veterinary care and that hopefully it's not going to become hit by a car or she's going to become pregnant and she can't have her puppies and
Mm,
dies of dystocia sort of thing. So
that's fantastic. Okay. This is all good advice. I'm taking such deep mental notes right now.
oh,
Um,
excellent.
and whenever I feel like I get on my soapbox, whenever I feel like motivated to get on my soapbox, I have to remind myself that like that might feel good for me in the moment, but it's not actually helpful to these individuals. So
Right.
Like, so I appreciate that bringing us advocates who might get a little bit too impassioned back down to earth. And clearly you inspire individuals in your community. And so the question here is what inspires you? What inspired you to focus on helping animals in this community? And is there a it's a two-parter question.
Okay.
What inspires you? And was there like an incident or a story or a moment or a specific animal that made everything kind of feel full circle, that like reminded you of what inspired you to get into this work?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2013, I started my own veterinary practice from really nothing more than just my degree, some needles, syringes, and blood tubes, and kind of started ambulatory practice and just building my way up to hopefully we'll be breaking ground here in about a month or so on a new clinic here in the area. And
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. In 2013, Tina Betts's Medicine and two of her friends started a nonprofit organization called the Wolf Point Pound Puppies. And their goal was to essentially one dog at a time, take it out of the pound and try to find it a home, find it a foster, find it a home. And I met Tina, I believe it was back in 2015. I was located about 70 miles to the northeast of Wolf Point. And the veterinarian that they had had for a couple of years here in Wolf Point decided to close up shop, wasn't her jam, was kind of leaving. And so Tina was feeling a little bit of a scramble of like, oh, okay, like, what are we going to do now? We're taking these dogs in from the pound and off of the street, and getting them kind of vetted and getting them adopted out sort of situation. So Tina and I crossed paths. And I probably, like I would imagine, many veterinarians have kind of bounced around a little bit, trying to find the perfect location, trying to find where I needed to be. And continue to do work. Tina would take their van and they would haul animals to me when I was in a couple of different locations, would get them spayed and neutered, vaccinated, just always kind of like slowly evolved into that. And then I found myself at the basically end of 2022, having an opportunity to be in Wolf Point full time and really just collaborate. So truly the inspiration. So, and like Tina and I would put on spay neuter clinics once a month, and I'd kind of be in the area, dabbling in the area.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, every time I came to the area, it was always like, there's a veterinarian in town. Can you look at this? Can you look at that? Can you do this? Can you do that? Sort of thing. And so, certainly a demand for a veterinarian because also, so going back to geography, the closest veterinarians to Wolf Point about 50 miles to the west, 50 miles to the south, or you have to go about 90 miles east or southeast to get to a veterinary clinic. So
Mm,
also,
wow.
yeah, kind of a veterinary desert. Like I'm the only veterinarian right now in the county. There's really just a handful of us in about a 4 county region that are serving lots of animals. And so really like seeing Tina's commitment and dedication to her purpose and Wolf Point Pound Puppies and all that they're doing to where they now frequently are transporting animals down to shelters that we work with and working to get animals spayed and neutered, getting them vaccinated. They even know, I mean, that's the nice thing about a small community is that oftentimes Tina will know firsthand what people's circumstances are. And so she'll help to provide community care to animals. She helped with a dog that needed a limb amputated. And so can help to also bridge that gap as well so that pets can be taken care of. Um, but yeah, so that's really like I see the hard work of Tina, and there's also been others along the way that have worked with Wolf Point Pound Puppies and their commitment that's really what inspires me. Tina is amazing and all of the things that she's, yeah, willing to do. And so I just get the benefit of I'm trained as a veterinarian and I can provide that branch of care to all of the work that they've done. But
Mhm.
it is, I mean, it's a super rewarding feeling. Certainly the vaccine clinics, kind of street dog clinics that we've done thus far this summer, people have so much gratitude. They're so thankful. They're so happy that their pets get care. And it's just a feeling like none other to have
Yeah.
that gratitude. I'm certainly a person that I live off of gratitude. Like it means the world to me when people are like, thank you so much for taking care of my pet. You're the best. Like those sorts of things. So gratitude goes a long, long ways in my book.
Wow. Okay, so hard shout out to Tina. Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. With like Tina Betts's medicine single-handedly is the reason why I'm in Wolf Point, Montana. So
wow.
yeah, I have no family here. Like I grew up in Colorado. And like people here are the salt of the earth. People here are amazing. And I shouldn't brag about it too much because then everyone's going to want to move here. Move to
Best
the
kept secret. The
Yes,
best kept secret.
top secret. But Tina Betts's medicine is the woman. She's amazing.
That's just watching your face light up talking
Yeah.
about her is
Yeah.
so wonderful, and I just know that, me and everyone listening to this podcast episode, they all have that one person that
Mhm.
was, like, crazy and passionate enough to, get the wheels turning for themselves and inspire change in their communities, and that's really cool. Okay, Tina, I love that, and you know what's really exciting and refreshing? Usually people come on this podcast and they talk about our founder, John Geller, and how John Geller was that person for them. So
Oh, yeah.
it's so exciting to hear. Every time I hear a new name, I get very excited, because
Yes.
we have such tunnel vision for John in our organization because we love him so much. But it's true, it really is it's that ripple effect, right? When you get that one mentor, when you get see that one person that's, like, living in their truth and putting it all out there and putting in the time and the hours and the energy to not only help pets and their people, but to inspire, like, the next generation of leaders to do that,
Mhm.
that's
Absolutely.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep.
And I
Yeah.
and I know you mentioned that you have a street dog coalition clinic today, which very excited about. I'm hoping that we leave this podcast episode with you feeling, like, happy and inspired and full of gratitude now that I know gratitude is of utmost importance to you.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious to know, this will be my last question for you. So I know that you're the team lead of the Fort Peck team. What are some of your goals and initiatives for maybe expanding veterinary care in your community through your clinics? And how can individuals who are hearing this, who live on or near the Fort Peck Indian Reservation, how can they support these goals for the future of your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our goals, so Tina and I have joked for years actually that we'd like to work ourselves out of a job. One of the things that we do that's probably pretty unique to a veterinary clinic is that on a weekly basis, if not daily basis, we work hand in hand with the City of Wolf Point Animal Control Officer, and now there are 3 tribal animal control officers as well.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, they will bring, so they bring animals to us. They get some basic veterinary care. They get, dogs get a canine combo, a kennel cough, dewormer, flea and tick preventative. And they also get a blood draw for testing for canine brucellosis, which is kind of a whole nother can of worms that would literally be an entire another podcast to have to go through that. But so very frequently we have animals coming in, like I said, every week, if not every day, that are being vetted. And so Tina and I have joked for years that we'd love to work ourselves out of a job. Like we would love to get to the point where it was just maybe a very random cat or dog here or there that needs a home, maybe life circumstances changed and someone needs to give up their pet. But certainly a day that sticks out in my mind is last summer when in my clinic we had 27 dogs between mama dogs and puppies that we all of a sudden have to find a foster home for and try to
Wow.
yeah. Yeah. And so if we could definitely, so that's one of our big goals is that we really want to really curb the pet overpopulation problem. We want it so that our communities are safe, that kids can go out and play, people can go for walks, they don't have to worry about dogs packing up, and just also the health of our community as well. Try to minimize suffering through not having people have to witness. I mean, it's not uncommon. You'll see animals that are dead on the side of the highway. We get parvo
Mm.
puppies, we get distemper
Aw.
puppies. Yeah, we see lots of mange cases, we see lots of malnutrition. So if we can minimize the suffering that people have to bear witness to, that's definitely a goal. And so on that vein, like that's one of the super cool things collaborating with you all is that if we can get these animals vaccinated, dewormed, treated for fleas and ticks, which the Bravecto that we've been using also is great for mange. But so if we can keep the pets that we have healthy, if we can try to really focus on minimizing the overpopulation of pets, those are probably our biggest goals at this point.
Yeah.
And yeah, certainly like for anyone who's interested, Wolf Point Pound Puppies nonprofit, they have multiple venues. You can find them on Facebook. They have their own website as well. But certainly, if someone's feeling inspired and wants to help, there's always a need for donations. There's always a need for, I mean, they'll hand out pet food to people. They will help get animals spayed and neutered, vaccinated, dewormed. Like I said, they try to offer to the best of their ability, some community care for pets that are in need. But they're also transporting, depending on what the shelters say, sometimes once a week they're transporting 20 to 30 animals, but they're making drives to Livingston and Bozeman, Montana, which are about 6 to 7 hour drives. So I know Tina's been diligently working on it, but I know that they need a new van to keep transporting animals. That's one of the challenges here is that we are so rural and we're so remote. And frankly, if someone wants a dog, they can just go out to the street and get one. So it's hard to adopt out animals. It's hard to rehome them within the community. So we really rely on sister shelters and working with them to transport animals out of here to get them a home and get them the loving care and attention that they all deserve. So
Oh.
yeah.
Oh, that sounds so lovely. Heather, it really does take a village. And I a- and I know that the community that you live in, I know the Indian Reservation, as expansive as it is, has become a more, I think, knowledgeable and compassionate and all around, I think, smarter and wiser community when it comes to caring for their animals because of your presence in the community. And I know that our Fort Peck team is kind of new-ish. Um,
Yes, yeah, no, we're new. It was actually it's for me, it's a God moment that last summer when I went to the AVMA convention in Denver,
yeah.
Colorado, and I looked at the schedule and I was like, hmm, Street Dog Coalition.
Hmm.
I feel like I need to go check this out. And I just remember like almost being pretty much moved to tears listening
Ah,
to John Geller speak and just was like, I need to go talk to that man.
yes.
Yeah, so it
There.
literally basically we're super new, reached out, like I went up after his presentation and visited with him. And we obviously are like a little bit different, that we're not a, inner city, like again, that could
Sure.
be a whole conversation of homelessness and people facing homelessness. But honestly, like if you look at it, national statistics, like this is an impoverished area. And there's a large percentage of people that live below the poverty line. I've seen firsthand situations where I'm like, yeah, the dogs need care, but what about the people? Like, what about the
Yeah.
people that are living in a dilapidated house that
Mm.
like I'm worried about them and like how they're taking care of themselves, let alone the dogs that oftentimes will just show up. But yeah, we're super new. This is our first year of clinics. Because we're also limited by the weather. And so we got the ball rolling last end of summer, fall. By the time we kind of got organized, we were like, okay, let's hit the ground running next spring when the weather is nice and we can get out and about. So yeah. So shout out to John Geller as well. He's also
I
amazing.
knew there was no avoiding a shout out
No,
to John Geller on this
def-
podcast.
definitely not.
There's
Definitely
no avoiding it.
no avoiding it at
We
all.
love him. He's great. He inspires us. And like Heather, there is someone out there thinking about you the same way that you think about John Geller. Just
Oh,
saying. Just saying, just to get a little bit cheesy and emotional here. It's
yes.
true. And I genuinely mean that. You are someone's Tina. Maybe you're my Tina. Maybe you're my Tina.
There we go. There we go.
But
Yes,
in all
absolutely.
In all seriousness, Heather, this conversation was really eye-opening, really inspiring. I am personally leaving here feeling motivated to continue making a change in my community and more equipped with the tools to sometimes have conversations that are a little bit challenging, that are a little bit triggering for me personally, because, like, obviously we're all in this together. And a lot of these individuals who don't want to spay and neuter their animals, it's certainly not because they don't love their animals, right? So
Right, right, for
yeah,
sure. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
all about, meeting people where they're at, as I know our supporters are, our listeners of the podcast are meeting people where they're at, and leading with love, which is obviously what you do so well. And Heather, I really want to thank you again so much for all that you do for the Street Dog Coalition. I love that I'm ending this conversation the same way I started it, which was telling you how amazing you are. Um,
Thank
and
you. Well, it's a
yeah,
yeah, true honor to me because as I said when we were chatting beforehand, I mean, we're really like, I mean, we're kind of the middle of nowhere. It's kind of like where's Wolf Point, Montana, sort of thing. So to be on a national stage and have an opportunity to talk about it and yeah, share it with the world, it's like I'm super flattered and do not feel at all qualified to be here. So
well, you know what? You are. And
thank you.
somehow I am as well.
Right? Yes. Yes.
We are faking it as we make it. And you know what? We can leave this episode with a famous John Geller quote, which is we are learning. This is kind of traumatizing though. We are learning how we are building the plane as we are flying it.
Oh,
He loves that one. He loves that one. And anytime I feel like I'm struggling with some kind of imposter syndrome or how did I get here? I'm not qualified to be having this conversation. I remind myself, no, like John Geller, I am just building the plane as I'm flying it. So
I like
buckle
it.
up, everyone.
Buckle up. Here we
Turbulence
go.
ahead. Seriously,
Yeah,
Heather, thank you for laughing with us, for sharing a
my
bit about
pleasure.
your experience with us. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning into today's episode. And I want to encourage everyone, as always, to check out the Street Dog Coalition website. It's going to be in our show notes. And if you go and click on our teams page, you can learn a little bit more about Heather. You can learn a little bit more about the reservation. And you can also sign up to volunteer, or you can make a donation and make sure that it gets to Heather's team. Every little bit counts. And Heather, thank you again so, so, so much. You alluded to multiple times in this episode, but that's a different conversation for a different day. So that means we
Yeah,
just got to have you back.
absolutely. I would be happy to. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Heather. Take care. And until next time,
Yes, pleasure.
adios. Thank you.
Ciao.